Welcome. Welcome, everyone. I'm Angelo Robles. Such a pleasure. I haven't done a live more big time across all my platforms in a while. It's a tremendous pleasure to have all of you join us today. So, again, I'm Angelo Robles. I'm the founder of SFO Continuity at Family Office and Billionaire Mastermind. So I have a lot of things I want to talk about today. Now, some of these topics I have covered in my new forms in 2025 of doing more kind of solo shorts, but this time trying to organize my thoughts, and I do have my show notes, so hopefully it's debatable with me, but hopefully I'll stay on script. And I do look forward to covering topics that I think are very, very important within the family office world. And honestly, topics that I feel often are, for a variety of reasons, not covered. So I came back about a week and a half ago from Miami. There were multiple alternative investment conferences. I had an opportunity to speak and lead some sessions at Uncorrelated Miami. And some of the topics I'm talking about today were some open forum discussions where I threw the topic out there, gave an initial opinion, and was interactive in the room. Nothing beats in person, but I guess live digital for at least today is as good as it's going to get. So, again, I'd like to welcome everyone coming across my platforms and a special thank you and welcome. And they're on the webinar feature to more interact with questions to my members of SFO Continuity. I won't be going hyper deep really into anything today because I like to save some things more one-on-one and in private groups for my members of SFO Continuity. And you could go to angelorobles.com, go to membership and learn more. If I had to really simplify it, SFO Continuity is a high-level intelligence and strategy network built exclusively for elite families and their family offices. So today, I look forward to going pretty quick and round robin, and feel free, especially the webinar participants, to ask questions or simply make a commentary. I could learn from your commentary, and sometimes, depending on the time and schedule, we could be able to interact, which I'm looking at the big screen now, with some questions that come in. So today it's going to be AI, quantum, sports, Mr. Beast, and influencers. A little tongue in cheek, but actually serious. He's a billionaire now. We'll get to that. Elon, disaster, Detroit, meaning really the Detroit paradox. We'll get to it. 84 trillion and more. I got more than that. I'm going to cover some gold too. So again, I'm not going to go deep dive into any one topic for a variety of reasons. So if there's one topic that really isn't your cup of tea, don't worry. Probably 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes at the latest later, we're moving on in terms of to something else. And for me, so I don't get too haphazard, I do want to try to stay somewhat on script. That's why I have my show notes. We'll see how good that is. But this is exciting for me. I know last year I did a lot of longer form, 7 over 3 hours, multiple over an hour and a half to 2 hours interviews. And I got my fair share of those coming up. Wait and see. Next week, we have some incredible guests. One person I met from Miami, so brilliant on macro and investing. That's going to be a great opportunity, at least for my members, next Thursday. And I got my big event in Palm Beach. I've kept it off the grid of my website, and I'm not even sure I'm really going to put it on there. We'll see. But that is the largest single family office program that I probably would have hosted since 2019, being on stage in Santa Monica with Tony Robbins back in the day of 2019. That was a lot of fun, but times change, you adapt. But I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. So why don't we begin to start some of my dive, because I have a lot of things to say. Let us surprise. I mean, what's going on with the Bank of England? So is this going to be a conversation, my part one of this, about gold? Or is it really more about counterparty risk? So I think many of you know the massive gold shipments from London to New York, nearly 400 metric tons, like 82, 83 billion, kind of moved to COMEX ahead of the Trump potential or the US import tariffs. So you have increased borrowing of central bank gold investors scrambling, I guess you could say, for physical gold, forcing them to for them to borrow from reserves like the Bank of England, back in the news again after their forays with Soros in the early 90s. So withdrawal delays of 4 to 8 weeks, like that's even if they get their gold at all. So you have to think about it. The world's top financial institutions are struggling to deliver gold that supposedly is already owned by investors. And this is my fear, and this is why I talk a lot about sovereign risk, about systemic risk, and about issues with larger institutions and banks. Although some of them are lovely and needed to some degree, I understand. So could this happen to the COMEX? If an investor can't get their allocated gold from the Bank of England, how secure is your gold in COMEX vaults? Well, or is that futures? Is that actually really there? What happens if there's a sudden rush of physical delivery? Just like if everyone went to the ATM or wanted to withdraw money from the bank, do you think they're going to be able to accommodate anywhere close to that? No. What if investors start to lose their faith in paper gold markets? What if the physical market is far tighter than even we believe or realize? To ignore red flags that to me are effectively everywhere, it's very concerning. Am I a worrywart? Yes. Do I somewhat subspecialize in sovereign risk and disaster preparedness for billionaires and the super rich? And I tend to see things like this that maybe others don't. They see. It's not because I'm that smart, because like you don't want to see it. The legal loopholes, like if your gold is even there, like do I actually own it? So how about many vaulting agreements allow for them to lease, or I always mess up this word, rehypothecation of your gold. So even if your gold is physically stored, it may not be available for immediate withdrawal. In crisis, maybe, if you're lucky, you may receive a cash settlement, as if that's what you really want, but you have to go through these agreements. The banks could sometimes be interesting. Why don't we put it at that? So gold is valuable because it's real, it's tangible, like so-called outside the financial system, depends. But if you don't have direct control over it, is it really yours? So you have to sometimes look at, as this story came to light and it popped in my head, gold in some ways isn't just an asset, it's a strategy. But if you don't have full control over your gold, and going through my notes, you're exposed to counterparty risk. The wealthiest investors, they aren't just buying gold, they're ensuring or want to ensure that they have access when it really matters. So you have to look at what's your plan. Are you a believer in gold? I am, and I own physical gold. Now, you have to understand a little bit, given the scenario that I just described. And this goes back to effectively exactly what is your plan? Are you owning gold strictly from it's part of your asset allocation? It could be a quote unquote, a paper investment. Like, sure. But if you believe in sovereign risk and disaster and you see the opportunity of governments printing money, of gold really being a forebearer of something that is very valuable, like I do. Some of you think that I'm only into Bitcoin and crypto and AI and cool and on the edge things. I like gold. I really do. Now, sure, do I have a single point of failure and risk if I were to keep it all in my home, even if it's secured? Sure, correct. So, but do I want to have some gold in home or residences? Yes. Do I want to keep some of it in maybe an onshore and offshore plan, properly structured with trust or ownership entities? Yes. And I know if things go to complete hell in a handbasket, I get it. Then if it's offshore, like how the hell am I going to get there? And is it going to really take care of my Maslow's hierarchy of shelter, of food and water in a total disaster? So these are all things that you need to think. You need to think through. But to assume that you own gold, it's in a bank, whether US or not, and it's 100% there when I need it, it's like, are you reading the agreement? Do you understand the contract? Do you see what's going on? And do you have diversity in terms of how you own it, your ownership, your entities, including outside of the banking system, and maybe areas in Switzerland and others that have a hundreds and hundreds years track record that could be safer than looking at some of the other opportunities that I'm noting here, not to pick on the Bank of England. Maybe things adapted in the last day or two since I did a little research on it. So again, I think these are all going to be very, very important points for many of you to have the opportunity to think through. So happy to hear any comments or field any questions within those of you that are our live participants, by the way. But I kind of have about 7 or 8 core topics to cover. And the gold one is really one that I haven't been more public in the market yet, so it's a little bit newer. So among the most popular sessions that I did in Miami is talking about, many of you know that I'm an active allocator in public and private markets. And anytime I talk more about public markets, because it's easy for you to go on your phone, do your own diligence and buy, there's no incentive for me or anyone else. It's just your decision. You always get people taking out their paper and taking notes more than anything else that I could talk about. So yes, I'm extremely active and some would say a little aggressive in volatile areas in AI, robotics, space, biotech. I think it's a very interesting time. My God, you probably are all saying Angelo like only talks about AI. Well, not just from an investing perspective, but basically the single family office model of the future isn't just a smaller version of today's model. It's fundamentally different. And the things that we're seeing now within the advent, and we're going to talk about quantum too, we're going to go through that maybe a little bit later, are all going to be impactful to everything, to the world, to your family office, to business, and to the generations to come moving forward. And a reminder, skeptics missed everything the last 500 years. Do they sometimes save themselves from short-term sorrow? Sure. And mistakes? Do sometimes things take time to play out? Of course. So it's a comment to get your attention. Maybe you don't take it too literally, but think about it from the printing press through computers, AI, social media, crypto. I could go on and on. And I mean, there's multiple reasons why families go shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations, but lack of engagement, interactivity with the rising generation, and simply smart investing and tax strategies to ignore the latter two is just foolish. That obviously plays into it. Now, I save most of the real insight for my members, and I'm opening this one a little more open today. And by the way, and yes, I am going to name names. I will remind everyone I have a wickedly high risk tolerance. Everyone has their own liquidity, their needs, risk tolerance, goals, time horizons. At the end of the day, I make a lot of mistakes. You need to do your own diligence and make your own decisions. You know, these are not buying things like US Treasuries where I'm going to get 4 to 5%. I don't know if I would trust that over 30 years, but short term, yeah, that's very safe. But then I'm limiting my return. So I'm going to talk about maybe a part of a portfolio for people like myself and family offices. And maybe that's 1 or 2%. For some, it may be closer to 10%. I've heard others talk about barbell, 80% hyper conservative and 20% very aggressive. I can't decide that for you. You need to formulate questions around some that I already asked around risk tolerance and time horizon, develop an investment policy statement, an asset allocation strategy that works for you and for a significant family that can get a bit complex, that can require multiple investment policy statements and asset allocation. But to ignore the reality that AI is the biggest thing that we've ever seen, like in our lifetime. It's going to be the control layer for everything. And like Eric Schmidt said, he's 100% correct. 100%. And I'm recently back yet again from Silicon Valley. It is underhyped. And we're seeing it play out, and we're going to get to DeepSeek and some of that. I've been pretty public in some of my commentary, but because we have some new folks listening, that is short to come. So some ideas that I will share. I'm intrigued by the intersection also of kind of drones in space. I would look at a company called Redwire, RDW. I mean, really, Drone tech, very interesting. I'm a little concerned. You got to go on these conference calls with these companies, by the way. The CFO left, little bit of a red flag. So there's space industry momentum, but of course, execution risk for these companies is high. In AI robotics, I'm intrigued by ARBE, kind of a early stage robotics play, which is what? High risk, high reward, but public companies. So that's what I mean by a liquid venture portfolio. NBIA, AI infrastructure, think kind of like CoreWeave for those of you familiar with it. Cloud data, AI acceleration. Now, yeah, we're going to get to DeepSeek and the impact on all that. Let's leave that a little bit later. And what's been hyper hot, I think a little too hot, pardon any puns there, Oklo on the nuclear and the energy play, originally what a SPAC by Sam Altman, as I remember correctly. I am definitely into biotech and AI medicine. I think game changing. Again, short term could be overhyped. And anything that I'm mentioning, boy, this is not classic and traditional. This is absolutely volatile and may go to absolute shit. When you invest, you can lose money. You could kind of lose all your money. I'm very intrigued by RxRx, which is Recursion Pharmaceuticals, kind of AI drug discovery. I admit AI for biotech sounds great, but has yet to really deliver results. Some of these are probably going to be crap. Some of them might even be effectively fraudulent companies. Some of them, I guess, are going to do okay. And some of them, I don't know, are going to do incredible. And in the last couple of months, a fair number of them actually have. Or does that mean it's too late? So how about Tempus AI, TEM, the symbol, kind of AI personalized medicine? I'm going to probably talk more about quantum when I talk about DeepSeek and NVIDIA too, areas that I've been very, very active in. IONQ is kind of intriguing. I think Rigetti could absolutely go to crap. It could also probably go up 50x. Yet you got to do the research, form a thesis, collaborate with smart peers that understand it or that are doing the work behind it. So there's other companies I could mention. I'm going to save some of them and keep them more a little intimate for my members. You could reach out to me all the time, by the way. But here's a comment that I am going to make about quantum. And some of you have heard me say it on my, let me change my camera angle a little bit, on my platform before. Jensen Huang is an awesome entrepreneur. NVIDIA, what a story. He spoke at CES in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and he kind of poo-pooed quantum, and quantum stocks dropped. He basically called it 20 years away. I'm going to give you all an insight. You kind of should have came to this conclusion on your own already, but it's okay. That was an absolute misdirect. Absolute and so obvious. I know it was. They're very, very, very interested in quantum. They understand that could upend technically their business and their model, and they like to be on the cutting edge. The US, the government wants that US company to succeed. Why don't I maybe know a little more than I want to even let on? Now, does that mean that quantum's going to take off and be incredible in the next year? No. Does that mean it's going to be fully functional within 3 to 5 years? Probably not, but there are some interesting things out there. But here's what I could guarantee. It's not going to take 20 years. They're all just, I'm using a nice word in misdirect. I could use an uglier word if that's what you want. So he downplays quantum. Some would say strategic misdirect, or does he technically see a bottleneck? So, these are things that you're going to have to eventually, one of my most common phrases, think for yourself. But if I cause you to go, and to do the research, to form a thesis, to think for yourself, it provides a valuable service. On the more boring, I still like NVIDIA. Are they going to be a little bit impacted? We're going to get to DeepSeek relative to their chip, sure. But longer term, I'm positive. Meta, I'm definitely very positive on for a variety of reasons. Palantir, kind of the math may not make sense, but there's other sometimes political and geopolitical reasons. I'm getting the feeling that company's going to do really, really good in the next 4 years. I wonder why. Netflix, a company I kind of shat on a little bit a year ago. Kudos to them making an interesting bounce back. And not everything I do is in the world of either crypto, AI, robotics, space tech, or drones, although that is kind of the cool stuff. And by the way, looking at ranch land, own gold and treasuries, traditional stocks, but look at what was it, Brinker International, which is Eat. They own restaurants like Chili's and Maggiano's. Eat, that's a great symbol, of course. They are crushing it, crushing it. Even Texas Roadhouse has done well. Back a little bit to gold, I would look at AEM, uh, Agnico Eagle Mines, I believe. Just an interesting play. Again, something to think about. I mean, is the stock market a house of cards? Sure. Could you help stack it in your favor to a degree? Does some of it you have no control over? Yeah. And interest rates, inflation, government policy, what Trump's doing, the markets don't like uncertainty, and tariffs, whether I kind of am fascinated and agree with them or not, is a different story. That did cause a little bit of a ripple, I guess you could say, in the market. So again, these are things that I'm interested in. Sure. Of some of these in AI, would I like to see more actual results? Well, I think that's coming. A quantum real breakthrough still ahead. A space and robotics. By the way, we're behind on robotics and drones, the US relative to China. And perhaps that will start to more even out, but we have some work to do. China, by the way, and some of the initiatives they're doing with DeepSeek is a very, very intelligent and worthwhile competitor. And that's kind of what it is. Let's kind of be a little bit honest about that. So I am going to talk about something that some of you heard me talk about more publicly. So hopefully it won't be overly repetitive. But some people like a little, I don't know if I'd use the word storytelling, but to kind of make some of the things that I'm talking about somewhat come to life. I've spoken about the Detroit paradox. Detroit in the 60s, they saw, it was so obvious, the Japanese auto manufacturers coming. They saw it. And what do they elect to do about it? Nothing. We're the fat cat. All is fine. We'll worry about it next year. And that worked until it didn't work. Perhaps the 74 oil embargo, big gas guzzling cars, inefficiencies in operations, outdated structures and systems. Detroit at one time, I believe, was the wealthiest city in America. The wealthiest, until it wasn't. And did it really ever bounce back? Did the US auto industry outside of Tesla really ever bounce back? Jobs vanished, industries left, and real estate values plummeted. The families that might have thrived kind of saw what we now look at as being obvious. But if you see the tsunami, is it too late? So I think the lesson, and bringing it back in, why should family offices care? This relates to everything that I've been so focused on about seeing AI, inflation, de-dollarization, geopolitical shifts. You could see it, but are you going to do anything about it? And to me, more specifically, AI and what I mentioned, effectively, that is, I mean, that is the new Detroit. Family offices were originally designed mainly for what? Capital preservation, long-term growth, and multi-generational continuity in a relatively, I'm using that word a little loosely, relatively stable economic and political landscape. But that world does not exist. Most family offices are built in a pre-AI world. Most family offices are not used to things that we've been seeing, especially since coming out of COVID. So these are very, very interesting times. And it's not just that I'm talking about investing in these industries, both public and private, although I think that's very important and has been successful for me and a number of my families. It's deeper than that. way deeper, even within the family office. The technologies that you're using now, and these companies know this, they don't want to adapt as quick as they should to more of an AI platform. That would take them time and money. You may have to go through a new contractual agreement. And reteaching the family office, which often is never fun when it comes to a technological perspective. And they're making money hand over fist, a lot of these, hand over fist, but they're relying on your ignorance to not want to hold them to a higher standard because it takes too long too much time and retraining to kind of change that tech stack. There's new or newer platforms upcoming that are better and more cost effective, and all things that my members are going to be more interactive in, as I have a lot to share relative to that. So I also talk about and spoke about at the roundtable in Miami, April 5th, or was it April 6th? Let's go with April 5th. April 5th of 2024, under a year ago. And kind of something that I call no way out. So I'm in my kitchen in quasi-rural-esque Connecticut, but relatively not that far, about 2 or so hours from New York City. And literally, my world shook. Not used to that. Don't live in California. So, like, wow. Called my son, checked in with family, was a little concerned. House is about 50 plus years old. And then I just imagine, partially due to how I think, imagine that word being stuck on Manhattan Island and kind of having no way out. Suppose it was worse. A bridge went down, God forbid. Blackout, no electricity. So no power, no ATMs. Imagine no cell service, and kind of, as I described, no exit. And that little thing that I described on that date in April of last year, airports and sea access, the ports itself, seaports were closed down for about 30 minutes. But just imagine that, like I said, no ATMs, no cell service, city lockdown, no escape. And again, when disaster actually strikes, it's kind of, I guess you could say, it's too late. So should families have an immediate plan? Should some of it be more traditionally written? Should some of it be more hard on a laptop and some of it more in the cloud? Should there be a 24, a 48, and a 72-hour plan? Every family office, really every family, kind of needs that now. So some of you aren't going to like that I say this, it's just true. And that's just one example of a natural disaster. There are others. We're seeing it play out a little bit in LA, or did earlier back in January. We can imagine the horrific natural occurrences in greater Florida as well, or in Puerto Rico. And really, no matter where you're listening to, and these are just natural disasters. Imagine if they're unnatural, there's other forms. Do you think that being in a city especially if it's more of an island, is the safest place to be? Do cities produce fresh water and food? No, they're consumers. And you're in a lot of people getting very nervous in a concentrated area. I mean, what good could come out of that? So when I speak to people, former Green Berets, Navy SEALs, people that address these kind of issues, and areas around sovereign risk and disaster are most definitely near and dear to my heart. I've done multiple consulting assignments for families on it, and probably being not in a city is probably, and having access to water. You could go, 2.5, 3 days with no water. You could go weeks, months, depending on your age, condition, health, etc., with no food. Like, you're kind of okay there, but you need access to water or the supply chains. So these are things that really, in my opinion, kind of have to be thought about. How about communication? Suppose the cell phone towers are down. Do you have a sat phone? Do you have what every family office should have, a crisis response around security, mobility? How about mobility? How about access? How about an onshore and an offshore plan? Although that gets a little bit more structured in detail. What's going to be the exodus? When to leave? How do you communicate? Where do you go? Possibly how to move somewhat undetected. How about redundancy in systems? When you have too many points of failure and this could go back to Occam's razor. This maybe goes back to what I said about gold and single point of failure versus truly decentralized. But I don't want to really make this a Bitcoin centric conversation, although how that would play into something like this with no electricity. Do I have Bitcoin on quote unquote sticks? Do I have small amounts of gold? How about food? How about water? How about communication? What is there a chain of command and a crisis process in my family office? Could I prepay to get the hell off the island, no matter if it's legal or not? So your wealth alone won't save you in situations like this. Preparation will. Families who act together before a crisis are the ones who actually, in some ways, emerge stronger. And no, it's not paranoia, it's an actual strategy. Those who wait to react, they become the liquidity event for often someone who has planned ahead, is kind of one way that I would put something like that. Like you have nothing to lose but to, is this a small consequence of happening? Yes. Let's even call it under 1% or a small chance, but are the consequences dire? I go to a restaurant, I spend $70, I don't like the dinner, I don't go back there again. But if something has like whatever, a 1% chance of happening, but the consequences to me or my family could be dire, then that needs my attention. That needs a plan. That needs me to have the culture to think about leadership and culture into a plan, into adaptability, and having something in place. So let's move on to a different subject. The future of sports ownership. I mean, you heard what happened last summer with private equity's play. So the NFL kind of changed the game in August of 2024. League owners approved private equity ownership of minority stakes for now in teams up to 10% per franchise with a 3% minimal buy-in. And for the first time ever, private equity firms, they can hold equity in up to 6 teams at once. Now, I believe it's a 5 or is it a 6-year holding period? So this isn't really just about capital infusion. It's about the future of sports ownership. And it does make you wonder, now that gigantic private equity is going to get involved, and this has been happening, especially in sports like the NFL and to a little bit lesser degree, the other big sports in America, at least, like the NBA and Major League Baseball, is majority ownership, even for a billionaire. I said majority ownership becoming unattainable. The days of George Steinbrenner in 1974 buying the New York Yankees for $10 million and putting, I think, $1 million down and borrowing the rest, that's long gone. So let's be real. Owning a controlling stake in the NFL, the NBA, the MLB is like, it's the NFL. It may not even be a deca billionaire game moving forward, depending on your percentage of ownership. It's getting into centa billionaire territory. Team valuations are skyrocketing into billions, uncorrelated to other markets. Why? Supply and demand. There's a limited supply. Even ultra high net worth individuals, even billionaires with more than 1 billion are kind of being priced out. So that's why we're seeing new ownership structures emerge, partially to the leagues adapting and to existing owners, potentially some of them aging out, dying, families not as interested, wanting a liquidity event. Yeah, I found it interesting with Mark Cuban selling most, not all, of his stake in the Dallas Mavericks, a team that he seemed to love and have so much passion for. So why would you do that? In my opinion, I would do that. Well, there's a couple of ancillary reasons, but I simply have a better opportunity with that block of billions and billions of dollars. Seeing the shift before everyone else is very important. Positioning for an even bigger, longer-term play. If Cuban is moving at a majority control, it kind of begs the question, is private equity the next dominant force in sports ownership? Will we see private equity push for majority stakes in the coming years? And will other than the NFL here in the US, meaning NHL, Major League Baseball, and basketball, kind of follow up and follow this trend and eventually them having majority stakes? Again, it's a limited supply. It has been historically a very good investment. So will these private equity funds form super groups? How about that to buy full teams? How long before these investments kind of become the main pathway to ownership? Kind of be asking these questions. Will traditional owners lose control to these financial giants or desire for the liquidity event too? So sports ownership is shifting from what it might have been in the past, more of a passion project, to likely getting more and more and more institutional. And I have multiple families that are minority interest owners in teams. I have, I think, one in baseball. That's a majority at about 38, 39% compared to the others. And to me, and thinking someone who looks at things a little quirky and a little different, just following these trends, I looked at myself at a very small minority stake in a team and I elected to pass. I'm, as I see the rise of the WNBA, definitely intrigued about that as being, am I getting it at relatively a low price, but maybe now that cat's out of the bag. And not to make it too sports centric, but two more quick comments. Maybe Cuban had a very good decision because the NBA has not been doing as well the last couple of years. This year, it's doing terrible. Now, again, I don't want to make it a sports discussion, so we could, and another, I love sports, so we could get into that at a different time. But nonetheless, I find it interesting. I'm going to take a peek to see, okay, some comments. Skate to where the puck is headed. Speaking of sports, although I think that might have been when I was talking more about AI and things relative to that. So just seeing some of the comments and checking some things. I know I've covered DeepSeek, but I think for those of you that didn't hear, I have to do a little bit on it. So DeepSeek, the disruptor that is shaking up AI and NVIDIA's dominance, although obviously they do different things. I get it. DeepSeek is legitimately impressive, but the hysteria, the overreaction, like it's kind of an indictment about how fragile actually the AI infrastructure really is. DeepSeek is showing the world how to do effectively more with less. It's clever engineering. It's drastically reducing power consumption for sure. So advanced GPUs like NVIDIA makes are still required for processing. Jensen is a wonderful entrepreneur, has all his skin in the game and backing of the US government. They're going to be fine. Short term, maybe a little more volatile. AI is still data intensive and data centers aren't going anywhere. The future of computing, I mean, it's going to be more than just about power. It's also going to be about security. So sure, the threat to NVIDIA and AI infrastructure with DeepSeek's announcement spooked, I guess you could say, the market, which has bounced back okay and sparked fears that simply AI models will require moving forward fewer chips, less energy, and effectively what amounts to a lower cost to compute. Just add up that math. Now, I can make the argument, did Silicon Valley get bloated, get high on the hog, get a little bit lazy? And China, to their credit with this company, has kind of changed the game, up the ante, and did it wake up? A sleeping giant. So we shall see. So NVIDIA became what? The world's largest company, kind of riding on the boom. And now investors are probably asking, will the demand for high-end chips collapse? And I believe the answer is now, as I kind of hinted, hold on, not so fast. So without question, like I said, Silicon Valley got more than a fair share wrong here. And I know the US government's very on top of this. They know a little bit of a race. You want to call it a Cold War, US and China. And I could go deeper into the value of AI and quantum. And the first one that really wins into some sort of super intelligence probably kind of runs the world, but we'll save that discussion for a different time. So you got to ask yourself, will computer cost be commoditized? I mean, to some degree, it's inevitable. Data centers are still a massive play in expanding. AI needs infrastructure and energy. And how about the building of the data centers, the underlying infrastructure, the electrical components and all that? That's what you got to look for in some of the public plays too. But I'm saving a little that for my members. More data equals also more security concerns. Now, that's where quantum security will eventually become very important. Open source models, Meta's Llama, and obviously this one here with DeepSeek, kind of these inference models will explode, democratizing, I guess you could say, AI development. And like I said, Silicon Valley, very arrogant, thought they had this locked down, that their moats were untouchable. They thought NVIDIA chips, in the way that utilization, as I'm describing here, was the only game in town. And effectively, they ended up being certainly wrong. AI, now here's the good. This may not be great short term for NVIDIA, and maybe even not as much short term for data centers. They're going to be fine again long term. This is great overall, this open source platform and how they did it and others for the AI community. Oh my God, this is a boon. AI development is more accessible than ever before. Big tech's moats are starting to look, well, maybe a little more like puddles, but again, they'll be fine. And hardware costs are set to plummet. So competition in AI, which is good, is about to go in hit hyperdrive, which fits into my thesis about AI and the interplay with robotics, drones, space tech, and all that. If anything, this is going to be a boon. Now, the $5 million or $5.6 million training cost, complete baloney. Do not buy that hype. It's a narrative. It's a psyop. Yeah, they wanted the impact NVIDIA in the US markets. They did. But again, I think they kind of woke up a giant here in the US. And it was designed, that announcement, their timing with what, the first or early second week of Trump's presidency, to slow down investments into the US AI ecosystem, startups, etc. And who knows, maybe a coordinated move that one day in terms of shorting a giant like NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is not done, just that simply the game is changing. Respect to DeepSeek for the cleverness, for a variety of different factors, and there's no question that it's real, but the misinformation around it and that $5.6 million number is just like laughable. So AI computing is simply evolving. It's not disappearing. And I know that NVIDIA will adapt, but sure, does it need to pivot fast? It has everything correct in place, from its leadership to its culture to its systems, to do that. Now, quantum computing and quantum security will kind of be the real end game. So let me get a sip of water and we're going to dive into that. And I promise Elon and things like that are coming. So still about 3 or 4 more subjects. I hope you're enjoying it. Some of you texted me. And by the way, I'm okay with text. You could reach out anytime, 203-570-2898. I'm an open book. Bring it on. Let's go. So one more sip. The quantum wars, a little bit with Trump and Stargate, maybe the connection, and effectively Cold War realities. So quantum, and this is really maybe bigger than AI, bigger than chips, quantum dominance. The timing of, again, China's DeepSeek launch, like I said, perfectly matched relative to Trump coming in office. And this goes back to, again, a race, a Cold War, respect for the intellectual rigor and capacity and what China and DeepSeek is doing for sure, and an incredibly worthwhile competitor. And in some ways, just flat out, collectively, AI, robotics, and drones. I mean, definitely on drones, I could argue that China's ahead, a slight, and it's going to be interesting. We shall see. But in this war, and maybe the race to AGI, to superintelligence, to quantum, the prize isn't just AGI. It really is going to lead, I think, within 5 to 10 years, maybe closer to 5, of quantum supremacy. And that will be supremacy of the underlying government and companies, including financially, including militarily, and geopolitically. I can make the argument, might be wrong, that effectively, what are the stakes? The stakes could be the winner takes all. So quantum disruption is coming. I mean, again, like I said, with Jensen Huang at the CES conference in Vegas, decades away, a complete and total and utter misdirect, period. Now, if NVIDIA doesn't own quantum, that's going to be a problem for them. But they know this. They have R&D. They're going to buy companies. They're going to figure it out. And I'm confident for a variety of reasons that I noted earlier relative to NVIDIA. Now, given their size and scale and market cap already, no, that's probably not going to be a 10x. Well, if you give something a long enough time frame, it could be. But, that's not going to be where a big play is. So some players, I think I mentioned some of them earlier off the top of my head, and I don't want to give it all out, but companies like IONQ and Rigetti are companies that are playing in quote unquote in the public markets relative to quantum. And again, very, very volatile. In private markets, you're probably all familiar with Sandbox AQ. Interesting wild card, kind of combining AI and quantum integration, could be game changing. Maybe you could get in through it to some SPVs, or maybe you want to actually end up, buying from people selling and going through whatever Goldman or banks or JP Morgan. If you're a large enough and connected enough investor, you could actually get actual shares. But these are all going to be very, very volatile. Sandbox AQ is already kind of using the combination of AI and quantum technologies to solve kind of real world complex problems across multiple industries. But it still is kind of moving from the hype stage into execution, but no damn way is that going to take 20 years. Is it going to take 1 year? I don't think so. 2 or 3 years, probably not. But it's within a foreseeable future. And the future of global power, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say it again. A lot of this is going to come down to quantum. Who cracks quantum first kind of controls, I could get a little dark, many things. Financial systems. It's going to reshape traditional encryption, which probably uses SHA-256 from the 90s. So banks and cybersecurity, it's going to get very interesting. Military, material sciences, what's going to happen with the advent of fusion energy? Are humans within 5 years not going to be needed to create anything? A super intelligence, which could be 10,000 times smarter than an Einstein. I think I got to let some of this sink in a little bit. Someone is, I think, technically considered a moron at about an 80 IQ. Einstein's IQ, some would debate it, probably about 170. He was deemed to be, and how they quantify it, 2.4 times above a legal quote unquote moron. When this really takes off, we're not quite there yet. When it really takes off in a couple of more years, and damn well no, not 10 or 20, this is going to make Einstein seem like the moron on like 100x. This is big. Now, again, I don't want to get into utopia, dystopia. There is a time and a place for that. I've done some like that. I'm going to have more coming up this year. I just want you to think from these perspectives. This creates an intelligence edge that really no AI alone is going to be able to match as it evolves. And it's not speculation. It's just simply a matter of when, and to some degree, some of it is happening now. I mean, is it a zero-sum game? It might be. There may be no second, depending on how harsh the winner, the first in, wants to be. And I think if you're not looking at quantum investments, and by the way, I'm okay with saying no, it might even be the best choice. You might be right, I might be wrong. What I want you to do is think for yourself. I want you to put in the time, and I want you to, what I learned too is I limit my risk by limiting my allocation. Now, I could get into a whole talk about principal versus agent. If you're a non-bloodline, effectively non-family member working in a family office, depending on the goals and aspirations of the family, their respect and belief in you, and kind of what the premise is, your hands might be tied. And you may be very limited in terms of doing even for small amounts of the portfolio. But here's what I'll say happens too often in the family office world. And I'm just being honest with you. It's rare to find people willing to change their minds on topics they commonly refuse to investigate. Like, let that sink in a little bit. Like, because I think that's actually really important. And by the way, for family offices, problems are going to be endless because there'll always be new ones. What I want in my family office is a problem solver. I gave this analogy before. If you don't watch the show in the past, Suits, you won't get it. The lead character was probably Harvey Specter, an attorney, but I looked at Harvey, an attorney was kind of secondary. He made problems go away. He was a creative thinker who figured out a way, right or wrong, to solve problems. And I think that really is at the heart, especially moving forward, of family offices in a little bit, I guess you could say, in a new world. So I do think you should look at the things I'm talking about from an investing perspective. And if you make a decision, it's not a good choice, I understand it, but you put in the work. Don't be wanting to be right ahead of making money. And that's what too many people did on Bitcoin, but we could save that for a different day. The future is being built quietly while the masses chase like yesterday's trends. So are you ahead of the shift of liquidity? So these are things you need to think about. Now, if you thought I was a little out there relative to AI, robotics, drones, space tech, oh, that's gravely conservative compared to what I'm going to, on a more brief note, mention now, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but meant to be serious, I think. Influencers are eating the world. They're kind of the new power brokers. And there's new billionaires who are likely going to create new family offices, single family offices. At least I like that. Thank you, Joe, for that comment. So the game has changed. Mr. Beast, he's not even that young. Mr. Beast is the most popular influencer, I think, in the world. He's definitely the king of YouTube. And he's kind of goofy. And he is a billionaire. The guy came from nowhere like 5-6 years ago. And listen to this. You have to let this sink in. This is a big one. Are you ready? He created a chocolate brand to leverage his, whatever it is, hundreds of millions of followers. A chocolate brand 2 years ago. And it's the #1 bestseller. Godiva's been around for hundreds of years. Everyone knows what it is. Everyone's grandmother, Godiva. And somehow this Mr. Beast, because of his brand, of his influence, creates a chocolate bar. And I think that's what pushed him into the billionaire stratosphere. Wow. So we're living in a world where influencers are going to be very powerful. Influencers are going to create from meme coins, we'll get to that in a second, to social tokens in the world of Web3 and crypto. About 2 or 3 more years now that we have an advent of change in the SEC and way more crypto friendly, we're going to see the rise of social tokens. We're going to see the rise of various things, including actually even NFTs, not as much from an art perspective. That ended up being a little bit not so good. But the blockchain and NFTs in terms of tokenization of assets. But I don't want to get too far off what I said with social tokens. Program coming up on social tokens in April, by the way. So just stay tuned. Imagine if Mr. Beast could do this, what could Taylor Swift do? She could create meme coins, social tokens, which have some level of more value with a sense of community and maybe access to her. But again, we'll save social tokens more for a time in April. So on that subject that I mentioned, thank you again, just looking through some of the comments. Trump, 3 days before inauguration, dropped his meme coin on paper, made tens of billions of dollars, more than in 50 years of being a real estate developer. So now, yes, obviously some of that clawed and pushed back, but made so much money on something that really legitimately has no intrinsic value. Social tokens are going to give the value of community And I can make a strong argument for Bitcoin, but we're not going to do that today. I didn't put that in a title, so why should I do it? But influence is now a direct economic asset. How about that word? It's not really just marketing, it's monetization at scale. Meme coins. And you have to look at like things like the Fed and crypto's next move. Trump's meme coin skyrocketed. Now, what happens next? Altcoins, which are not really the big one of Bitcoin and not meme coins either, but they dipped after the DeepSeek announcement. Coincidence, perhaps. Now, the Fed cuts rates, crypto will surge as well as everything, but I think crypto gets an extra boost. The entire landscape of money, influence, and speculation is evolving, everyone, evolving in real time. You don't have to like this. I'm not sure that I like it, and I'm a little crazy and out there. What we learned in college and how the world works is just evolving and evolving very quickly. It's very, very different now. We have to understand that we never have complete information. We'll never have the information that Trump is president and others are. You could be a decabillionaire. You won't have that. Now, we could get into an Elon conversation from that perspective, but we could save that one for a different day. Am I saying that family offices should go out there and become influencers and buy meme coins? No. But I am saying that their investment offices may, and I spoke about this years ago and you all laughed at me, probably should consider a internal crypto and blockchain expert, and definitely now someone active in AI and more advanced technologies. And that could all cycle back up to the CIO, that the CIO or the family or a committee, well, don't get me started on that, could make the final decision. And may meme coins play a little bit for 1/10 of 1% into that? Maybe. It's not for me to decide, it's for you. But if you keep on doing the same things, you know, oh boy, you want me to make a lot of the SFO executives mad? Here's what someone told me. It wasn't one of my original thoughts. Something to the effect of advising the family as a, I guess I would broadly say, executive recruiter, and looking at currently what was going on and like how much is the current CIO effectively being paid. And this person's a little bit of a deeper thinker, understands investments and whatever. Let's say the number was 1.5 million. And the guy that I know said, no, actually, he's costing you over the last couple of years like 300 million. And the principal is like laughing, like, what do you mean? In missed opportunity. Do I think that's too extreme? Yes. Do I think that we need to understand the context behind it? Yes. But this goes back to the bigger picture of the world is changing. And when I talk a little bit about Elon and Doge and the 6 people under 26, this is going to tie into some of this. So again, I tend to be a little bit scattered. It's just how I think on a variety of different topics. Then sometimes I piece them together. So you'll have to just stay with me a little bit. And I'm going to have some more water and get right on to, I think it's the final 2 or 3 subjects. We all heard about the 84 trillion. Wow, is it that big? No, it's, well, whatever. Wealth shift. No, this won't be an orderly transition. Oh, but the baby boomers are dying and the heirs are going to take over. Really? One, are they really dying? What's going to happen with biomedicine? And I mean, let's also, thanks, Jack, get a little bit into it. Okay, so 1, they may live longer than we expected. 2, do they have enough money to kind of live to be 110, 120, depending on their rate, expenditures, etc., taxes, a lot of different things. But how about this? A lot of them have dynastic trust. A lot of them want to, right or wrong, control from the grave. Therefore, the heirs may actually not get to be in a position of authority, especially for more wealthy families that are more likely to have generation skipping trust. and other structures in place to so-called protect them from what themselves. I don't agree with that. I think there needs to be more interconnectivity and activity among the generations, but I'm just telling you what is one reality, that it may not be as clear cut that this transition is going to happen in the next couple of years for a variety of different reasons. Whenever people start to talk about something in droves, it almost always seems like it's going to end differently than what the masses think. Don't forget, the masses are the masses for a reason. They're average for a reason. And yet somehow we elect to, of course, to follow them. So the other thing that we have to consider, 70% of heirs are already on record as saying, of course, they're going to take their money elsewhere. And this relates to some of the topics that I've been talking about. They feel the family offices and the advisors are comfortable with their parents, grandparents, the elders, and they have a different perspective about how they think, how they process information, their risk tolerance, and some of the topics and areas I'm talking about, they more intuitively get because they grew up in more of a digital age. I guess I would put it that way. So be very, very careful about getting anchored. Be very careful about and we all have them, confirmation biases. These are all going to be very, very important points. And by the way, when I'm talking about all these subjects, the value of an in-person program is you throw the subject out there, you give a 3 to 5 minute overview, and then you forcefully, if they're not interactive, call on people to be interactive. It's meant to be interactive. It appears digitally. It's always very, very hard in terms of to do that. But the real value of this is exactly what I said. It's being very interactive. So I basically don't think, unlike most people, this gigantic transition of wealth down to generations, it is not going to be smooth. It's going to go differently than we think. And some of the reasons that I already noted, areas around biomedicine, longevity, generation skipping trust, and lack of adaptability of current advisors and the perspective of the rising generations is going to effectively get very, very interesting. I think wealth fragmentation is going to be at an unprecedented scale. Family offices will struggle to even exist, let alone retain control. And the rise of the next generation investor who simply thinks fundamentally different. It's not only about money, that's a part of it. To them and how they think, it's about influence, control, and kind of shaping the future. I mean, I also have one thought. It's really out of the blue. Didn't plan on it. I'll just make a one sentence about it. I mentioned PE firms and their activity in the NFL, and eventually majority ownership in the NFL and other sports seems to be inevitable. Will private equity and like organizations buy I didn't just say single family offices in the future, providing that family a liquidity event to some degree, a seat at the table? Yes. This is more than just SFOs morphing into MFOs. We've covered that. Good topic. I'll do it again. But I'm going to talk about thinking out of the box of private equity firms actually buying the assets of that family in a single family office. You are absolutely going to see a rise in that. Okay, I guess one of the star attractions, I did a short on this yesterday on some of my platforms, kind of what I call the Elon formula, kind of hiring and his unique strategy of what he's implementing at Doge. So let's put all politics aside. Let's just look at it the way that Drucker would perhaps look at it. So Elon is not hiring traditional resumes. He's hiring, to be a little bombastic, hyper-intelligent 19-year-olds from my backyard of New Canaan, Connecticut, apparently. So what does he look for? And then how could family offices learn from this? And I've been talking about these principles forever, but I'm not Elon. And I get it. Elon could get on the phone, get one of these young whizzes that you and I can't do, and The kid is like with his mouth open. Yes, Mr. Musk, 24 hours a day I'm in. I get it. He definitely has some advantages. So, one, why is this politically incorrect to say? If I have a family office, I want to win. I want to be dominant. I want it to be incredible. I don't want it to be mediocre. I've always said only about 3% of family offices are really great, and I want it to be great. I need to have people that are very, very smart. IQ matters. Like, just blunt and direct. Now, how you apply your intelligence, applied intelligence, to actually be fruitful and solve problems is a little different than just you have the horsepower. I want you to have the IQ and the horsepower, and you may have to prove to me through the past or my conversations and simply how I'm going to see your results really quickly, your applied intelligence. I'm going to give you one that I think is wickedly underrated. And I know that Elon looks for this. High energy, not just being loud like me, high energy. You're impassioned. So imagine having incredible intelligence, being able to regulate your emotions and apply that intelligence with a purpose, coupled with high energy. Like, you can't beat that. I think Elon made some joke about, the opponents to him are basically 5 days a week, like 9 to 5. He's got these kids like sleeping in the office, working 7 days a week. And some of you might be a little offended by that. I am not the biggest advocate of, oh, well, you need to, don't have the boss overwork you, and you need to have a balance between work and life. In your 20s, bullshit. You better work really smart and also very, very hard. You have 10 years before this world gets flipped by AI and quantum, and then we have other issues, but to make real money, you better do it now. Now. So, pure intelligence, applied intelligence, resilience. Can you take the heat? Thanks, Jim. Obsession, which resilience and obsession float a little bit around high energy, but it's different. Obsession, I'm definitely obsessed about single family offices. Do you live for that mission? Now, speed, Bezos speaks eloquently about that. You don't need to have all the information. You iterate as you go along. Now, sure, they need to be elite communicators, no wasted words. And as a Dr. Adam Grant talks about, givers, not takers. Now, to find someone who has all, 7 of those things, good luck, but they're out there. They appear to be easier for Elon to find. So the core team at Doge, 6 under 26, one is 19. Some have no degrees, some no degrees yet because they're technically still at university. Practically, none of them, I believe, have any government experience. Some of them aren't even software engineers, yet they're advancing at a level. Let's put the politics out of it. You got to take that out. They're advancing at a level that companies and family offices would never comprehend. You almost always, when there's an issue, you have a who problem, not really a how problem. And I know that hits a little hard. I'm sorry. It's just my 20 years, my traveling the world and knowing family offices. It is what it is. Great family offices, great startups, great hedge funds. I'm relatively close to Greenwich, Connecticut. They win because they hire right. When you hire brilliantly, you kind of can't fail. Bureaucracy, which Elon does, the way that I heard from insiders how this guy crushes bureaucracy and gets things done and eliminates bottlenecks for people that have bottlenecks but are talented, it's like no one is like that guy. Bureaucracy kills innovation. Small elite teams executing at light speed. So in my example, traditional hiring filters, especially those by most family offices, are obsolete. I mean, are you building with warriors or hiring, I guess you could say, for mediocrity? Now, I know when I talk about this, it's never liked in the community. And by the way, many family office executives are incredibly ethical, talented, and deserve respect for their years of service to a family. I just expect more. And I actually believe it's inside them. Don't just be you, be the best version of yourself. Everyone, the best athletes in the world, need coaches and mentors to get better. And in today's world with AI and technologies and quantum and all that's rapidly changing, there's nothing wrong with that. So I believe every family office executive could get better. Most all of them have the technical skill. There's other factors around. I mean, we could get really deep into Peter Drucker like principles from objectives and key results, key performance indicators, uh, being focused, focusing on your one thing may be the most important thing. There's a variety of practice management work that I do with families and their family offices. Actually, maybe that's the part that I actually love the most. So I'm not crapping on family offices, even when I say, like other pundits, there's not many, but some of us say as well, that most family offices aren't that great. I put the blame at the family. The buck stops here. It could be you're just not doing what needs to be. And sometimes there does need to be a shakeup. And sometimes we do overvalue experience relative to some of the capabilities that I described with the example with Elon and Doge. And I thought about not giving that example because it's become a bifurcating one to some people. But again, and Lord knows I tackle things that most don't. But let's put the political part of it aside and tip our hat to some of the other aspects of it that I think are lessons for us all. So we're almost at the home stretch. I'm taking a peek. Wow, I guess a pretty lot of people popping in. They, thank you, thank you. I think secondaries are interesting. When I bring up at these roundtables, what do you want to hear more of? Smart tax plays, secondaries are among the most common things that come up. So yes, family offices are kind of flooding into secondaries because they're getting or maybe selling pre-IPO shares at the right price, and that kind of is the right edge. Now, you could go through a reputable broker, get actual shares, but maybe you're too small. Maybe you don't want to put in a gazillion dollars to that. And certain SPVs could be very, very good. Others are not that good. The devil's in the details. Make sure you understand the SPVs and have the right team. So some people just want exposure to some of these names at perhaps a discounted price. Things like I mentioned before, like Sandbox AQ, PSI Quantum, Ripple Labs. That's going to be an interesting one. A subject for a different time. It's a crypto play. Circle, I guess, another kind of stable coin in crypto play. What if a company blocks an employee from selling? Not really a problem. Are you all familiar with appreciation rights? And not to say you're going to be able to do that, negotiate it, but you can lock in the upside without direct ownership from the person selling, avoid transfer restrictions, and still profit kind of from the pre-IPO growth, I guess is how I would put it. So this is how the real players move in private markets. And sometimes as a family office, again, you got to get up, you got to take action. Are you getting access or just watching from the sidelines? Again, don't be comfortable. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Push the family to be the best version of themselves, to do the best that you could in investing, in tax mitigation, and engaging in the capacity and the capability of the rising generation. I mean, I think at that note, God, we covered a lot. I guess I didn't cover my cigar collection, but I don't think many of you are that interested in that. Some of you have commented, I really do enjoy a good cigar. It's a Friday. I'm going to have one. Some of you asked, do I think, or is the word want, to win the Super Bowl? I'm going to go with the three-peat. So my pick is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, Eagles fans, it's okay to hate on me. I'm a Giant fan. So, of course, I'm never going to pick the Eagles to win. uh, we could save things like on advanced tax strategies for billionaires for another time and do a deeper dive with some wonderful thought leaders. But I can make the point that to some degree, taxes are optional when you structure things correctly. Billionaires don't just make money, they keep it. Now, things could be changing with Trump's presidency, with the IRS. Uh, so this really may get complicated. But I am an advocate of understanding the value of having a holding company. I have one myself, kind of your own mini Berkshire Hathaway, passing all assets through a single private holding company, coordinating it with how you structure your more liquid assets and a family office, looking for more capital gains over income, structuring payouts as applicable as long-term capital gains, doing certain lending and distributions of your shares, reinvesting profits tax-free, using retained earnings. I mean, these are all relatively lower to mid-level strategies. Someone asked about private trust companies. I do love me private trust companies. I would look into regulated and also unregulated. The state is going to matter. Look at Wyoming for unregulated. South Dakota is great for regulated. Dynastic trust, we mentioned that earlier. Sometimes I'm not always the biggest fan of controlling from the grave, and trust never runs out unless it invests too conservatively and it misses out on opportunity. Remember the example I gave earlier, your executive cost you 300 million, not 1.5 million a year because of opportunities that were out there that were simply missed. Foreign asset protection trust. And by the way, those of you listening internationally, we are way more limited here in the USA. If you're a citizen of the US or a green card holder, the IRS follows you everywhere. There's very, very, very little tax arbitrage, but practically most other countries on earth, this is legitimately hyper important, bringing this talent internal to your family office that knows how to structure assets in companies in Luxembourg would be my first choice, probably in Europe, and how to structure residency and all that. We don't have some of those advantages here in the US. One unique advantage, and I'm due to do another program on it, it's been too long, is effectively Puerto Rico's. I guess if you're a US citizen, they changed it from what, Act 20 and 24 to like Act 60, where it could be what, 0 to 4% capital gains. But you got to fit the guidelines in Puerto Rico. So that would definitely be a play for some quote unquote US centric families. I mean, there's corporate tax engineering, moving IP, business revenue, digital assets offshore, a non-dom status in the UK, Singapore, UAE. Again, globally, you guys have some huge advantages that we don't here in the US necessarily have on that. Now, we do have philanthropic initiatives. We do have private placement life insurance. For now, that's under some attack. We shall see. Real estate could be attractive from a 1031 and depreciation perspective. Even some things that I dabble in relative to farmland and ranch land. So I know taxes are not the most exciting thing to talk about, and I know we're a little bit more hand-tied with the arbitrage here in the US. But I got some incredible people. There was a time when I first started out in this community. There was a guy in Chicago. I think he was at one of the big firms. His name was Steve Thorne, long since retired. That was the guy back 20 years ago that decabillionaires were telling me back then. That was the guy on taxes. And I had 20 incredible families over the years back in the day that I recommended to him. And it's like, Angelo, like that was like the most valuable introduction that you ever made. I am looking a little bit for today's version of that. I think I found him in Silicon Valley. We actually met originally about 11 or 12 years ago. So stay tuned. At least for my members, I'm going to have direct opportunity and access to be very, very helpful for you. And for others, I may share a little bit more publicly. So I think important things to know are taxes to some degree, depending on your entrepreneur and how you structure, are somewhat of a choice. Wealth is preserved often through having a plan, through having structure, not through luck. And really, it's not evading taxes, it's working within the current plans, which are what, 90,000 pages here in the US? Ridiculous. That absolutely needs, for sure, uh, an overhaul, for lack of a better word. I am going to, in 1 second, I'm going to go back to my screen. There may be some questions that some of you have. And again, in kind of taking it to the home stretch, I'm Angelo Robles, been in the community of single family offices for decades, probably most known as being the founder of Family Office Association. Been there, done that, sold it. So my new private club, way more intimate and high end, SFO Continuity, is really a private intelligence network for elite families and family offices. It's built exclusively for them. And simply go to angelorobles.com and have an opportunity to learn more. Thank you for all the comments. Most of the comments, including some private, some more public in the platform, and others through text that I'm looking at now, where thank you all so much. I'm going to linger on a minute or two in case some questions specifically pop up within the feature there. I promised I would talk a little bit more about Palm Beach. So again, in wrapping up, rather bluntly, you get value being part of a private community. You get proprietary network, my decades of experience in the community, the depth of my Rolodex, like that tax person that could basically solve any problem. That's the Harvey Specter. Not that they're illegal or accounting, that they solve problems for you. And maybe one of my main jobs is to know who those people are and how to get you favorable access, not just access, favorable access to them, along, of course, with my proprietary knowledge and my skill set that I'm happy to really immerse and share with you. But you know what? The real value is your peers. I got members that have invested in 900 companies, some that are dominant leaders in what they do in gold and in mining, that were active in iconic or as iconic hedge fund managers, that were, some of them in Europe are 12, 13 generations. What you're going to learn interacting with your peers, to some degree digitally, but you really got to make it into Greenwich, New York, Miami, Palm Beach, Chicago, Dallas, Southern California, my trips to Europe. And if you're not close by, we have planes. You could get on a plane. It's going to be worth it. Was when I went to Miami just 2 weeks ago, I met someone that I think changed my life forever. This guy was so damn smart. Speaking of solving problems, like, you don't know who you're going to meet. And sometimes it comes from unexpected sources. So being part of a community, we all know that most of the family office community events are garbage. They're terrible. You're lucky if 20% are somewhat real. It's mostly fake family offices and service providers. Not only that, sometimes mediocrity of setting and location. I could maybe live with that, but damn it, I got to have good food. You at least got to feed me well. And how about the content? The content is garbage, often sponsored, multiple panels, too many people on them, everyone trying to get a word in. Now, again, was I a little part of that problem? Sure, although I think I did it a little better. So imagine Palm Beach. I'm going to get there the whole week of March 24th. We're going to go to the Breakers and have a nice 10, 12, 15 people, cocktails, casual conversation. And just the programming and social activities, Tuesday, all the things I covered here are going to be far deeper, far naming names. And imagine going around the room, not having panel after panel. Imagine going around the room with 40 to 50 real single family offices and saying, Jack, what was the last 3 investments that you made? Why did you make them? What was the thesis on one? And how much did you put in? Jim, you're looking for a co-investment. Tell us a little bit about it. Who here as a real family has a deal that you would maybe want to share with others? Get up, talk about it. Oh, come on, Sue. I know you have one. Get up, get up. Mary, what was the biggest problem as a family office executive that you had, and how did you overcome it? What was the biggest mistake you made and how did you overcome it? How are you investing in VC? Do you think the IPO markets are going to go up? There's so much peer to peer questions, not even as formally structured from the stage. Me walking down to the tables, having the extra mic, handing it as I ask that question. Imagine having incredible thought leaders on Bitcoin, on AI, on perhaps from the Trump administration, on economics and macro, on areas pertaining to private deal flow, on real estate. Like there's so much. So I know I'm not really yet promoting it on my website. That'll probably change in a week or two. It simply is called the Palm Beach Single Family Office Forum. It really is meant for preferably members, up to 40 single family offices, and really just a couple of others as guest speakers and a sponsor here or there. So I want to reverse that ratio. I don't want to have 20% real people and 80% the others. I want to have 80+% quote unquote real people and 20% others that are good, that are high quality, that are respectful of your time. And by you interacting with them, like, wow, they're either very smart, they could help me, that was incredibly valuable, or they have something that I legitimately am interested in. So I'm looking to do something special. I'm very, very excited about it. I love Palm Beach, been going there for years, pretty connected there. So looking to really be incredibly active. Palm Beach will be the first of a relatively modestly larger scale program that I've hosted in a long time. Dallas, Hamptons, New York, Southern California on play or on tap for the rest of the year. So there's never been a better time to join and be a part of what I'm building. And simply going to angelorobles.com, you can't miss the membership tab. It'll then describe membership, scroll down, and joining it, honestly, it takes like 90 seconds. It really can't be any easier. I absolutely will be raising prices. I promised the charter members that that's what I would do, that their benefit coming in early while I'm still kind of shaping things up, feeling out what works, what doesn't work, is the opportunity of, one, their belief in me, and I'll owe them one forever, sure. But the fact of they're going to pay forever a lower price, being effectively a quote unquote a charter member. So now is the opportunity. I'm wrapping that up really in the next week or two, and then just moving forward. Here's the irony. I'll actually get more interest in membership if I raise the price. I learned that from Tony Robbins. Like, it's just the reality of how it works. It makes no sense to me, but again, we're human beings. So I've never been busier. This is probably the most creative time in my life for my content. Again, in a community that's too boring, too vanilla, lacking outspoken voices that want to speak about geopolitics, macroeconomics, and investing, and really anything else you want to throw at me that I could cycle back to the super rich and family offices is game. I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm right, but we're willing to have the conversation where, and again, that's been a problem and a challenge in this country for way too long now. And both political parties, both aisles, left and right, they're both at fault. The things that people are claiming now about the Democratic Party were things that I heard 30 years ago, which were accurate on the negative front about the Republican Party. It's crazy how things get flipped and things changed. And of course, inevitably, it will happen again. So, you have to make an impact with yourself, in your family, in your family office, that spreads to the community, and that spreads over, hopefully, to you being valuable from a societal and your philanthropic and your initiatives. But it has to start with you. Hold your family office and your foundation, your businesses, to the highest standards. I don't care whether you like Elon or not. You got to admit, the guy knows how to get things done. And what he's doing is groundbreaking on practice management, on the uniqueness of his hires. Like, I think there's just so much for all of us to learn. Imagine one day that every government, I'm getting off topic, every government expenditure is on the blockchain and we could see everything and a breakdown. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily so good. We could save that for maybe a different, more political discussion. And again, like many people, I voted both sides of the aisle over the last 30 years. I do not have all the answers. I'm not tied into any one party. And I think we're living in very, very interesting times. But I go back to the world is different now. Your family office was built pre this world, definitely, unless the last year, pre AI world, and you need to adapt and iterate. If I do one thing, I am good at seeing around corners, at thought leadership in that direction, and having the right connections. Might my timelines be a little off? Yes. Okay. I've been saying AI agents, and a lot of the things I'm talking about are going to be highly impactful in the next 6 to 18 months in family offices. Family offices will look totally different by 2030. Maybe I'm off by a year or two, by 3. I'm not off by 20 years. At the end of the day, I am correct. At minimal, you owe it to yourself to put in the work, to understand the people that could help educate and provide guidance. The word that information isn't valuable is total bullshit. Information, the right information, is very valuable for you to think for yourself and to make your own decision. If information wasn't valuable, how come it's illegal for me to trade on public company, quote unquote, insider information? It's because the information is very, very valuable. And the people that are super rich and want to maintain it in a world where I'm going to tell you it's going to get harder and harder. Now, that is some of the value. And I don't care if you like me or not. My family tells me I'm not particularly likable. Do I provide, am I helping you think for yourself? And am I bringing up things that you're not hearing within the family office community with some level of intellectual rigor and backing it up? That is all that matters. Honestly, I don't think a lot of my members particularly like me. I'm not a super likable person, but I do take pride and obsession and my energy level in the single family office community. You can't match it. You'll find smarter for sure. Unfortunately, that benchmark isn't too high, but I'm just going to outwork you. I'm going to be obsessed. I could go 3 days without sleeping. You won't keep up with me. So on that note, I don't think other than a lot of you saying hello and enjoyed it, thank you. And again, I want to do more like I have been doing, more short form from outdoors in Wyoming or my living room or my chess set, or when I'm traveling in Miami, 10, 15 minutes. That appears to be more trendy these days. My members get a lot more of the deeper stuff when they want to participate in it. Sometimes I'd like them to be more active and take actions as well. But I will be doing more mid-size, like I mentioned, Palm Beach in the week of March 24th, and upcoming in the future in Dallas, New York, Hamptons, and Southern California, and probably one more trip to Central Europe. There's a chance in, is it May, that I'm going to the Middle East. So, that will be interesting. And I had multiple trips to Mexico, Latin, South America in the last year. So look to get my Spanish matching my name, Robles, a little bit better than it actually is. So again, now is the time. This is going to be an incredible year. You want to go to angelorobles.com, and now is the time to join. 2 of you are asking, Angelo, we're not a family. We're not an ultra high net worth entrepreneur. We're not a rising generation family member. We're not even a single family office executive. It's a good question. You are correct. Joining SFO Continuity is then not for you. That is limited to families and single family offices. I'll consider occasionally a founding partner who's a legit investor and has been successful in a multifamily office, but that's case by case. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to give you any love. One, I give a fair amount of free content. You can reach out to me, say hello, and I'm happy to impart any guidance that I could. And some of you might be a good fit for, and again, like 1 or 2, for Palm Beach or an other event where your intellect and your insight provides incredible value. And maybe what you do, my family should learn more about. I had someone reach out to me in Miami. Holy shit. This guy is like the top G here in the US on quantum. So he's going to have an exit one day. Hopefully, he'll be a member. But his connectivity and his knowledge, he's going to talk your ear off and be very, very high IQ. But so for me, that may go above my head. But of course, all of you are too smart. So me knowing who you are and what you do is still valuable. There may be ways you could engage at my event. Oh, and by the way, for those other than family and single family office, I do master classes dedicated often in Miami on the water that are 2 days that teach you everything on a single family office that I know. You get a data dump, then we also go and have dinners and smoke cigars and have fun. And not enough of you sign up. I get blocks of 2 or 3. I should be having 10. I'm going to be able to teach you so much. But no, God forbid, you don't want to pay the price. Then I could, and again, I learned this from Tony Robbins, condense in several days what took me 20 years. And is that worth what, $1, 100,000, 200,000, something less? So I do master classes, not only for family offices. I do creating and reimagining into a top 1% family office and sovereign risk and disaster preparedness. I do custom master classes for companies and for anyone at legal, accounting, hedge fund that wants to attend. I send out invites. A lot of you don't open it. You think you got it all figured out. Maybe you do. There's definitely things I could learn from you too. And I consult once or twice a year. Sometimes they're short, intense 1 week at the company home office. Sometimes they're over months with people in the industry, understanding the mindset of the single family office, knowing everything about internal structuring, taxation, investing, how they think, and how you could be their version of the Harvey Specter, how you could solve problems. And you have me as part of your dream team, and the people that I noted that are part of my dream team, they become part of yours. But sure, I'm a capitalist. I run a business. You expect me to give that for free. That's unfair. But I do help people within the community. And some of you are incredible, and you could be even more incredible. So reach out to me. The email is angelo@angelorobles.com. The website is simply pretty easy. My name, angelorobles.com. Those qualified, just go and join. You'll see the membership tab. Follow me on @FamilyOffice on YouTube. I'm active on LinkedIn. Going to start again, doing some level of different content that's going to be a little more shorter form, but I still got some incredible, I promise, maybe not quite as much as last year, but some 2 to 3 hour interviews in store. And they are going to be incredible. In conversations again with Michael Saylor, I interviewed him 3 years ago. I don't think he liked some of my questions, but he responded to my DM. So hopefully I'll get him back soon. There's a chance, I told him about it, that he will be a chance, one of the speakers at what I'm doing in Palm Beach. And we're looking to have one splash speaker, but that may be a surprise, actually, wink, wink, the day of the event. And like I did state, anyone could text me. This is not a second phone. I may have to get that in a year. It's my real number. You can reach out to me. It's okay. I like hearing from people. I may be a grouchy old bastard, but I still have a good heart, or so I hope. I'm not always such a Darth Vader. 203-570-2898. 203-570-2898. Took a final look at the board. Thank you all for participating. I hope you enjoyed it. And let me know with a DM, a text, an email, what I could be talking about more, what I could research more. And it's okay to challenge me on my ideas. I'm never offended. I'm wrong a lot. You could help to educate me as well. And I want to be well-rounded in what I do. So feel free to reach out to me anytime. Thank you, everyone, and have a blessed day. Thank you.